Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special post-election 2020 constitutional considerations here on Tactical Review Live. See, we've got a few people watching the stream. Go ahead and give a shout out in the live chat. Of course, any questions or comments you have, Elias and I will be very happy to address as the discussion goes on. And before I introduce the guy that you see on the left side of your screen, I also want to thank our friends down at Freedom Reloads and Arms for helping to support the channel. And without any further ado, I want to welcome Elias from the Liberty Review podcast. Elias, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Just another day in paradise. And I see Riemann Scimitar is in the live chat. Welcome. And I'd like to lead off. Everybody, social media, let me phrase it that way, not everybody, but social media seems to indicate that the world's on fire and that 1 out of 2 people has died or something like that. But do you know what the difference between my day-to-day and last Wednesday was?
I'm going to take what is nothing for 1,000.
The sun rose and set with about an hour time differential.
Yeah. The days are still getting shorter right
now.
And
you gotta love daylight savings time.
Yeah, it's the time change.
Yeah, let's intentionally jet lag ourselves twice a year. I think that's fantastic.
I'm down.
So, yeah, regardless, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Regardless of what we find out within the next, I'm going to guess, 24 to 48 hours without...
Bro, I'd say within about 48 hours, yeah.
Regardless of that, I'm going to keep grinding to improve myself and to hopefully improve tactical review, because that's what I'd like to do. So... And then, as any fallout from the election impacts my personal day-to-day life, well, then I will cross those bridges when I get to them. I guess World's on Fire was actually kind of insensitive of me to say, given the Australia wildfires back in January and the California wildfires, 2 months ago. So... apologies to anybody who was negatively impacted by either of those events. Anyway, what we know right now is really nothing, except for based on results that are in and have been finalized. Do I need to put air quotes around finalized?
No, these aren't finalized. These are unofficial. So, yeah, they're not certified until probably about 2 weeks from now before the states will actually certify.
But right now, Joe Biden is within 6 electoral votes of having the 270.
Like, yes. Yep.
So, yeah, obviously from a Second Amendment perspective, that's not the best thing. We're still waiting on Senate results to see if the GOP will maintain control of the Senate, at least by simple majority, which I think would probably be the most ideal. I mean, obviously, if all three, or if the legislative and executive branches both go completely blue, that could be problematic.
It could be, yeah. I don't know if it would be, but it could. I mean, it was during the Obama administration at one point, and the only thing they barely got passed through was ACA. So, and even when they tried doing an assault weapons ban 4 years ago, or 4 years ago,
right.
8 years ago, whenever it was, they couldn't even get it out of committee, pretty much. Having said that, I think if they could take it over this time, they would absolutely try to ram something through despite the Republicans. And that's what my biggest, I don't want to say fear. It's definitely
concern.
Not a fear. I'm not going to be afraid of, yeah, I'd say a concern. I'm not going to be afraid of what happens in the government. But My biggest concern would be that they're going to try to do a whole bunch of things, not because they actually think it's what's best for the country, but because, well, let's go take out some aggression against the Republicans. But the good thing is, like, right now, it's sitting 48-48 in the Senate, and from what I can tell, they're going to be able to pick up at least three more seats in the Senate. I could be wrong, but I do see some pretty strong Senate races where the Republicans are leading. They look good, so it's not over till it's over. But as of right now, it kind of looks to me like the Senate's going to stay in the hands of the Republicans, which will be a good thing. Because at that point, the legislative branch at least will be split. Because chances are the House is going to go to the Democrats, right. And of course, the presidency is looking more and more like it's going to go to Biden.
You mispronounced Harris.
So, I'm sorry, it's the Harris-Biden ticket. It's the Biden-Harris ticket, or the Harden
right.
ticket. We'll just combine them.
So, talking about gun control legislation that may or may not, I mean, obviously, we've seen the Joe Biden gun control plan.
Correct. No more AR-15s.
Right. Why the big push? 2020 has not been a quiet year by any stretch, but as far as active shooter situations, now I did just pull up the Wikipedia, and there's actually a really long list. But the thing is, though, is that I don't recall any major events, or many major events, and especially not recently, using any so-called assault weapons. So why the big push? Why is that such a huge platform right now?
I'm not sure. Do you remember what happened in 2019? Were there a lot in 19? Because 2019 is where this really started. You had Beto O'Rourke going on about how I'm going to take your guns and I'm going to take your guns. I know there was the El Paso shooting. That's what it was. It was the El Paso shooting, which is Beto's area, which is what got him kind of caught up. And then there was a shooting also in Dayton and a couple more shootings in Texas. I would say that's probably where it started, was from Beto. It got a lot of progressives on board. They really liked what he said, and that whole thing was just hilarious, because even CNN was calling him out, saying you can't do what you're saying you want to do, which is mandatory buybacks.
Right.
That was kind of where I got my idea from, when we were talking before about people who bought honey badgers right now, whether or not the government could actually force them to return them. And my thought was probably not, because even CNN was saying that wasn't going to be possible.
They did with the SBV and the Reformation.
Well, they can claim anything they want. What happens when it goes to the courts?
That's a good point.
And when you purchase it, that was a legal thing. So anyway, we're getting off track. But I want to say it's probably where it kind of started. And Biden trying to pick up, and remember, Biden was not the choice progressives wanted. They wanted Sanders. They wanted Beto. The DNC couldn't have that. So the DNC pushed Biden, and Biden took off. I'm sure there was nothing fishy about any of how that happened, just like in 2016. So at that point, Biden's got to try to get people on board. Well, easy target, the low-hanging fruit for Democrats is firearms. Now, my question is, how much of a low-hanging fruit is that after what happened this spring, when we saw a record number of liberals going and buying firearms?
Not just this spring.
So that would be a really interesting thing to see. How much can they actually get away with at this point? But again, this is the good thing about having the Senate Republican majority.
Right, yeah. And so once again, my concern, and I voiced this last week or 2 weeks ago, I've probably voiced it several times. My concern is, of course, that he will realize, or his handlers will realize for him, because I'm not sure that he has quite the mental capacity to have a lot of epiphanies.
Right.
But I feel like somebody will realize that they're not going to get that legislation through as legislation, and instead issue edicts of the crown.
So that's definitely a concern, especially after what we saw Trump did. But, I'm remembering back when Obama was in charge, and he realized, so Obama couldn't get any gun legislation passed. When he decided he wanted to, I think it was after
Right.
Sandy Hook, he just could not get Congress on board. So he decided he was going to do an EO. And his lawyers very quickly told him, no, you're not. They very quickly told him that if he did that, it would probably get struck down before the ink even dried. Because of the fact that the president just does not have that authority. So the hope is that we would kind of see a similar situation. And, with the Supreme Court being the way it is, and thankfully now that we've got, hopefully it's going to play out to be a Republican Senate, we don't have to worry about the whole court packing nonsense that the Democrats are trying to push, which actually may have been one of the things that hurt the Democrats, honestly. The idea of the Supreme Court getting even more full and it all being retribution probably didn't sit well with a lot of moderates, I would imagine. So that's kind of my hope, is that, Biden's lawyers are smart enough to tell him, you're not doing it. You're just, it's not going to work. You can do it all you want, but it's not going to pass muster. Yeah. So now, having said that, I'm sure there are executive actions that they can take that would be technically legal by statutory law, maybe not constitutional law, but statutory law, that he can take with the ATF to do different things. That I wouldn't be surprised.
Because absolutely, Trump, as it was, attempted to appoint a rather anti-gun head to the ATF. And so there's no question that Biden's ATF head pick will be very...
So my thinking is, I know that Obama did some EOs having to do with background checks and things like that. So I can see him working to make it harder by doing something with ATF to make it, forcing it to be a little bit tougher to get those firearms. He won't be able to ban things right out on his own, but he can certainly make it a lot tougher for us to get anything.
So, I felt like I had a whole list of things I wanted to cover, and now I'm drawing a blank. Let's blame 2020. How about we do that?
Hey, look at that, and it's exactly what I thought.
So,
I just went to go look at AmmoSeek. Prices are jumping.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, kind of what I figured.
Yeah.
I just thought that as we were talking about how to be harder to get, I was like, let me go see what the prices are real quick. And they're definitely jumping up. They jumped up 5 to 7 cents a round for 223 just today. Because I looked yesterday.
Even at that, if you guys have 7.62 by 3.9 or 5.45 by 3.9, that's what you need to be feeding right now. And even that, I saw 7.62 was up to like 31 cents a round earlier today. So
here's 81 cents. Now I'm really wishing I had an AK instead. At least I get something a little cheaper, but 90 cents. Yeah. So pretty sure that's going to go up.
PSA had AKs for probably about the price of a case of 223. I'm just saying. That's kind of messed up to think.
My wife's watching, so
you could buy a whole rifle for the price of 1,000 rounds for a different caliber. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Riemann 54R is probably a good bet. So, and my Michigan folks, are any of you guys in here today? What the heck is happening up there? I see that it did finally solidify to a Biden victory.
Yeah, they went to Biden. But these are ones where that's going to be that legal challenge, because Trump's campaign is already talking about trying to halt the Michigan ballots, and then calling for recounts in Wisconsin already. So, 2000 all over again.
Yeah.
Oh, I hated 2000. That was horrible.
Without the hanging Chad.
As far as we know, I'm sure they'll find
absolutely.
something. Is that a dot or not? Did he actually? It's kind of like back to the SATs, I think, is how, if I remember right, absentee ballots. So now it's is it filled in all the way?
Well, and obviously every election there's contention. But
there is, but yeah.
This is just so. One of the things that I have heard happened. My coworker went to vote, and while he was there, a lady went up to check in, and they scanned her driver's license. But something you can't check ID to vote. That's on whatever. Anyway, they scanned her driver's license, and the system came back and said that she had requested an absentee ballot.
Mhm.
My coworker said her response seemed very genuine when she very angrily said, "No, I did not." So, what happens in situations like that, I wonder? Like, obviously,
I know you could request provisional ballots, which I don't know how it is in Indiana. I know in some states you can request a provisional ballot, which means as long as they don't get the other one, or it's like a thing of where they'll throw the other ballot out when they come across
right.
yours. They'll verify it, it'll scan, they'll say, hey, this person actually voted at the polls, throw it out. So the hope is that that's what will happen, because that is something where they are verifying. I don't know how it plays out. Each state's different. Each state gets to make their own laws of how they do it. But I do know a lot of states will have that kind of thing, what they call provisional ballots, and some states will have a thing where it's just straight out. If you come in and you hand in your ballot, the absentee ballot, or you can sign an affidavit that, hey, I never ordered this thing, which means they will throw away the absentee ballot when it comes in. But this is that concern that some people had when it came down to absentee ballots and mail-in ballots and stuff like that.
Well, and I saw something posted today that the USPS didn't follow some rules with one shipment of ballots
So there's one facility that supposedly there's 300,000 ballots that are missing. A federal court told them, you need to find these ballots by this time date. They didn't do it. They blew right through that. Postal Service claims that it was because they didn't have the manpower to do it. So who knows? They've been ordered to appear in front of the judge again and go from there. And who knows how that'll go. So,
but
it's a big mess.
Wait a minute. Now, I realize that it costs to send things through the Postal Service, but on the back end, isn't the Postal Service supported by our tax dollars? No? Okay,
no.
They are considered kind of a private enterprise?
No, I believe they're considered a non-funded.
Okay. All right, I was just...
they rely on what we pay at the post office.
I was only wondering because of the fact that, we want to give so many more services over to the government to do for us.
No, the post office is a weird situation. Like they have, I think, healthcare. They're considered government employees. I believe healthcare goes through government. The pension is government managed, all that kind of stuff. But their funding comes from what you buy at the post office. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to be really honest right now. I've told you this before, but I'm going to just tell everybody. And this is a little bad on me. Because I know that envy is considered one of the 7 deadly sins. And I know that we're not supposed to be jealous of our neighbor or the things he has or his wife. But you can go ahead and answer this because I've already told you the answer to this question. But you know who I'm really jealous of here on November 4th, 2020?
Canada.
No.
Oh wait, never mind. Black Rifle Coffee.
That's true. That's true. I've got an unpopular opinion about Black Rifle Coffee compared to some of the other. Anyway, it's fine. No.
Wasn't it the people who were like really set on their candidate?
I am jealous of people who, with absolutely zero reservation, cast a vote for a presidential candidate. Because I know those people are out there. I know that there are people who wholeheartedly, without any reservation, believe that Joe Biden is the best choice for president. I don't understand how, but I know that they're out there.
It's the same as there are people who believe that Trump really is the best for the job.
And
nothing wrong with that. But.
And I'm really jealous of those people because I think most of America voted for their candidate in spite of, or simply because my candidate is not that candidate. And
Correct. Exit polls showed
and
that.
so,
Yeah.
as I up to, I think it was within an hour of when I left work to go to my polling place was when I finally decided what I was doing with my presidential vote. Because I was that torn.
I was standing in the booth. Yeah, I was standing in the booth.
And so I'm really, and then I got thinking back after I got back to work. I got thinking back, and I don't know that I've ever been 100. Maybe the first election I voted in because I turned 18 on an election year, and that was we didn't have the internet back in 2000. Well, we did, but not the ubiquity of it wasn't like today.
Right.
And I think that was the last time that I just cast a vote with no reservation. And honestly, I think that was due more to ignorance than anything.
I mean, you're never going to 100% agree with the candidate. But I think it's sad that for a lot of people, there's not really a candidate that they identify with, even remotely. Like, there's only been one candidate I can think of since I started voting that I liked. They did not make it past the primaries.
Oh, there was one candidate 4 years ago that I was really excited to vote for on my primary ballot, and then they dropped out. Like the very day that I learned of them and looked at where they stood, and yeah.
Yeah, this was a candidate who I actually went to rallies for him and things. Well, I'll just say Ron Paul back in what was that, 2008. I really liked him, and I actually went to rallies where I was living at the time. That was a guy I could really get behind, and that's it. That's the only candidate I can think of since I've started voting that I really liked. And I didn't agree with. It was the same situation there. I didn't agree with everything he said, but there was enough there that I actually felt like here's a guy that I can really stand behind. I've never been able to do that with any other candidate. And it really showed. And if you look at everything with our election system, it really shows just how broken our election system is. Think about the endorsements. Mm-hmm. You can have a guy. Pence is a great example. I'll just say right now, Pence was wholeheartedly against Trump. But as soon as he got the nomination, all of a sudden, I endorse him. He's a great candidate. He's going to be the best one for our country. It's like, I'm not even sure how you can, I think, was it Cruz who refused to endorse Trump? I don't know if Cruz ever endorsed Trump. I was half expecting him to just drop the mic at the convention and walk off stage.
Well, and look at the Democrat ticket this year. Kamala Harris,
it's the same thing.
She called Biden racist and a womanizer and everything but his name. And then as soon as she got the vice presidential bid, she's all for it.
Yep. Sanders and Biden. Sanders and Biden are ideologically about as far separated as you can get and still be within the same party. And he said, I'm not going to drop out until the convention. I'm not going to endorse him. I'm not going to do it. And he did it. Tulsi Gabbard out of Hawaii, the same thing. She refused. She said, I'm not going to drop. I will not endorse Joe Biden. And next thing you know, the day after Sanders, I still say there's something fishy about that. There's something was going on, because the day after Sanders did it, Tulsi Gabbard did the same thing. But the point is for them to drop it, instead of just saying, I can understand if they say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to waste money. I'm not going to waste my volunteers' time to keep going for something I know is not going to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and drop out. But why endorse it? But to me, it shows, how we're kind of broken. And that filters all the way down to us at the polls doing exactly what you're saying.
Well, and then, as long as we're talking about things that are broken, no fewer than 4 times since yesterday, yesterday afternoon, as a matter of fact, have I usually it's about the time I'll see it and I'll be like, that's enough Facebook for me today. And then I usually have lied to myself at that point. But anyway, uh, you know, congratulations, libertarian voters in whatever state you gave your state to Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Let's take ownership here. Like, each of us, number one, that's a bold assumption that all of the libertarian voters would have voted Republican. Now, a lot of times they do tend to skew more conservative, but there's a large number of disenfranchised Democrats that I saw saying that they were going to vote Libertarian this year. Now, whether or not they did or didn't is regardless, because they at least at one point identified with Joe Jorgensen. And then furthermore, and we've talked about this before multiple times, maybe if we didn't have a polarizing president who kept tweeting nonsense, he wouldn't have disenfranchised so much of his conservative support base.
Yep.
Conversely,
go
ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's one of the big things is sitting there saying you good going libertarians, you caused him the election. Well, I mean, a true libertarian, first of all, is not going to vote for Trump anyway. They're not going to vote Republican anyway. If you really look at the libertarian platform, somebody who's really ideologically libertarian, full on, is not going to vote for the GOP. Those things that they would have liked, that they used to like about the GOP, are gone. So true libertarians aren't going to be there. So for the commenter to sit there and say libertarians, good job. Well, libertarians aren't going to vote for GOP anyway. They're more likely, honestly, to vote for a liberal than they are for because of social issues, maybe to liberals, because the Republicans have lost the conservative base of the free market, of all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so what he's talking about, what they're actually talking to, are the conservatives that decided to vote for Jorgensen. If your candidate is so bad that you can't even keep your conservatives voting for them, that is a failure on the party and on the candidate, not on the people voting.
Let's just dissect that a little bit. Let's look at each candidate outside of the realm of the opposition. You're telling me that the Democrats could not, by a landslide, beat the most divisive president potentially in this country's entire history? That's a complete failure on the Democrat National Convention. Now, let's flip that around. You're telling me that the GOP could not, by a landslide, defeat a candidate who is obviously suffering from dementia, despite all efforts of the party to keep that out of the limelight. At every interview, at everything, it's obvious. And the GOP could not give a candidate that could defeat that by a landslide. That's a failing on both of the parties. Now, the one problem, or the one thing challenge presented to the GOP, is that they had a sitting incumbent president. So
right. So we can go back to Clinton instead. Somebody who really just was a representation of the same stuff they've been dealing with for the last 8 years. And there was a lot of Democrats who really did not like Clinton. So here you have again, though, the same premise, arguably one of the most unpopular Democrat candidates in the history of the country, or I should say in the history of modern politics. And the GOP couldn't, they barely eked out the win. And again, the same thing back then of, here is a guy who's not even in politics, who's making everybody mad, including the party he's running in, and the Democrats couldn't do it there.
Yeah, it's just...
So even if we take it back 4 years to get rid of that element of the sitting president, it's still pretty
sad,
disheartening. Yeah.
I've got a quote to read. Have you read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Elias?
I started it years ago. I never finished it. It was good. I just never got around to finishing it.
So, and for those of you guys who haven't read the book, I don't know if this made its way into the movie. I didn't. I tried to watch the movie and then couldn't because it's such a departure from the book. Anyway, the president, Zaphod Beeblebrox? I don't remember. ZB. Zaphod Beeblebrox. Anyway, he's the galactic president, and he spent quite a bit of his presidential tenure in prison and all sorts of things. But the book has this to say about the galactic president. And I feel like it's just such an observation on modern politics. The president, in particular, is very much a figurehead. He wields no real power whatsoever. He is apparently chosen by the government, but the qualities he is required to display are not those of leadership, but those of finely judged outrage. For this reason, the president is always a controversial choice, always an infuriating but fascinating character. His job is not to wield power, but to draw attention away from it.
Well, we know that the DNC is trying to control.
Right.
And that's what we saw in 2016, and that's what we saw this year, where Sanders was doing very well in the primaries, and that's when they really started pushing Biden, and all of a sudden Biden took off out of nowhere. So, sorry, I got distracted seeing what Braster was saying.
I wanted to say hi to Braster, but you were talking. So anyway.
No, that's fine. I just lost track because I was reading what he said instead of actually focusing on what I was saying. But yeah, essentially that's what we saw. The Democrats want to control who's in. Instead of letting the people control, the Democrats feel we know what's best. And the sad part is, though, when you actually look at social media and you see what Democrats or liberals are saying, they're actually their wording makes it sound like they're okay with it. Like, oh, this is the best the party could give us. Well, no, actually, out of your party, you had all these people. Two of them that were actually in a very good position to take on Trump. I would say Sanders, who spoke to a lot of the progressives, which the Democrat Party has gotten a lot of progressives, and really a lot of independents who don't want to associate themselves with the progressives, or they don't want to associate themselves with the Democratic Party, but they're liberal. They would have gotten them. Or Tulsi Gabbard, who actually had a real appeal among conservatives, some of the more moderate conservatives. So they had actually two really good candidates that if they had just let things play out. But instead, the DNC had to control who won. But it seems like liberals were okay with that. Like, when you see some of these posts, it just seems to be taken for granted.
Well, speaking to Facebook posts, I keep seeing... Oh, there's just so much. We've all seen it. It talks about how racist Donald Trump is. And then I think back to Joe Biden, who in his time in Congress actually voted for segregation, who's made comments this year such as, if you don't vote for me, you're not black.
That's okay. There's a bunch of people claiming that Cubans aren't Latinos.
Right.
Like coming out today because of the high turnout for Trump in places like Miami-Dade.
Wow, that's almost like they recognize through all the bullcrap socialism for what it is, and they don't want to see what they left in this country that they fled to. Yeah. Holy crap. Like if you watch any interviews with Venezuelans or Cubans or Eastern Bloc countries, they tend to skew towards what we consider conservative or Republican values because they want no part of that crap.
You don't see them wanting to go back. I told you about this. The lady who's running for Congress, House of Representatives in my district, she is from
Yeah.
Ukraine. She grew up under
Mhm.
socialism. And as I was telling you earlier, I really can't wait to hear AOC try to tell her how great
Right.
socialism is. I'd love to kind of hear that conversation. But yeah, you don't see most of those. I mean, I'm sure there are some, but the vast majority of them you see who grew up in those kind of conditions, they don't want to go back to it. Cubans tend to vote Democrat, not because of the socialism aspect, because that's new. That's just come out in the last 4 years where you really see this heavy push towards socialism within the Democrat Party. They skewed more towards them because Democrats have convinced a lot of groups that they are the party of the minority, where actually if you look at history, and I'm not talking about, we're not going to even get into that whole mess of parties changed in the 20th century. I'm talking about modern history, like since you and I have been born. If you just look back in those few decades, the Democrats haven't done anything for minorities, but they keep convincing them, so the Cubans tend to go that route. Except now, socialism is really starting to get a greater grip within the Democrat Party and with the left. So now you're seeing these Cubans and the Venezuelan Americans going away and starting to shift over to the conservative base.
And so, well, we spent a half an hour just basically saying that, just like you guys, we don't have any inside track. We still don't know what's going on, except that the next at least couple weeks, probably the rest of calendar year 2020, are going to be a crap show where the election is concerned. So there's that. But over these it's gotten worse over the last 2 weeks. What do I want to call it? Information suppression on social media. And so this is something I kind of want to get into. Of course, Elias, you're not on Instagram, so
no,
but
thankfully,
because Facebook has introduced hashtags. I'm sure you realize that you can search for a certain hashtag, or like on Twitter, and you can view posts that have been tagged with that hashtag.
I will take your word for it.
So, like, let's say right now.
Is it like where you can click on it? Because I see it like it's a link.
Yeah. You can do that.
Oh, okay. But you can search by it
So
too.
let's say that you wanted to, for instance, right now I'm doing the 75 hard mental toughness challenge. I could go on to one of these social media platforms and just search for hashtag 75 hard, and I can see all of the posts that have been tagged with that. I'd like to wish everyone a great Leroy Jenkins. Hey, man, that's not your best tactical decision, by the way, but it's really fun to do in video games. That's my go-to strategy in Halo. Anyhow, sidetracked. So, I think it was over the weekend, Instagram actually disabled searching all recent posts by hashtag to prevent the spread of false information. We have seen over the last several weeks several Mr. Guns and Gears Facebook page has been temp banned, I think twice in the last month. Iraq veteran 8888, his page was muted, and he's I'm not the most impressed with how Eric. He was another one who thanks you, libertarian mother, and all that. Definitely wearing his feelings on his sleeve over this one. And again, I am concerned about potential President Biden's where his stance is on the issue. Absolutely. But I'm going to continue living my life until such a time as that there's a call to arms or the next election. I mean, one or the other, you know.
Right.
And I think it's. I understand the frustration. I understand the trepidation. But the fact of the matter is that we are all called to take ownership of the things we can control and to do work. And there's so many people who have used all of the events of 2020 as an excuse, but you see these standout people who pivoted where they needed to pivot, and they took the time that they've been granted in 2020 to make themselves better. Same situations, right? All of that has been out of all of our control. And yet some people took the opportunity to better themselves, and some people took the opportunity to just lay down and mope. So I'm going to, regardless of the outcome of this election, I'm going to do everything I can to make Blair better and more capable. And however I have to employ that, whether I'm able to use that to take Tactical Review and Tactical Review Live to the next level, or whether it comes to something else, we'll put it that way. I'm not looking to get completely deplatformed with one of my channels off YouTube yet. Excuse me. But back to the point that I was making. We've all noticed that the independent fact checkers, the independent fact checkers tend to have a certain political slant. We all know that firearm content and conservative content tends to be some of the first that's demonetized and muted on YouTube, so on and so forth. So I saw a post the other day that said, given the fact that the vast majority of people get our news first through social media, which now I think that's your first mistake, but that's irrelevant, that social media and social media companies should be handled the same way as a public utility. So Elias and I have already had some really interesting discussion over all this. Excuse me. And it becomes an interesting thought process. Because the first part is that I don't think that more government tends to help any situation. And so by saying this needs to be regulated by, already it gives me that bad taste in the back of my mouth, makes me want to go throw up. But by the same token, there needs to be some responsibility for this suppression of otherwise legal ideas. And I don't know what the answer to that is. Elias, you're being quiet because I know where you stand on this, but I want you to voice that.
Well, yeah, as I said, when you first asked me about it, I said, well, public utilities are useful. Social media has become the exact opposite of useful. It's manipulative. It is addictive. And it's all by design. And that's why I say I'm not, I don't mean it to be hyperbole when I say that it's not good. It is a manipulative system.
Now,
having said that, go ahead.
But the thing with the manipulation, now obviously they're going to manipulate you to the point of wanting to click and stay on. But as far as the manipulation of data,
I will say, when I say it's manipulative and addictive, it is one of those things where I kind of wish the government needs to step in a little bit, because we know what social media has done to get you to click. But that's not the point of this right now. That was just a jab at the idea that they're
Well,
not
that's
useful. I fall kind of under the idea that it's their system. Whether I agree with it or not, it's their system. However, before I go to the however, something that a lot of people have criticized CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, et cetera, for being very biased. But the fact of the matter is, newspapers and media have always been biased. If we go back to the revolutionary days and shortly after that, I mean, it's why a lot of our newspapers, I think I've said before, why a lot of our newspapers are named the Republican, the
right.
Democrat, because they were extremely biased. They were extremely partisan things. So my suggestion this morning was, you're not allowed to call yourself partisan. You're not allowed to market yourself. The false advertising might be one of those regulations that we need a little bit better in this country. Right now, anybody can say anything. Companies can make any claim they want. And it's up to people to take them to court and maybe get monetary damages or something like that because, Chevy said their car is going to last 300,000 miles and it lasted 20,000 instead before it blew up. But that's going through the courts right now for monetary damages versus any kind of regulation for false advertising. So maybe that's what the kind of thing is. If you're going to call yourself media, if you're going to put yourself out there as if you are giving unbiased information and things like that, then maybe at that point there needs to be something where we've already seen that the courts have already held we can regulate the Second Amendment, we can regulate the First Amendment. So maybe it's time to regulate the First Amendment and regulate media. And now CNN's not allowed to say that we are unbiased and nonpartisan, but there actually has to be a thing on there saying that they're funded by the Democratic Party, or CNN is a news agency that they're just not allowed to. They're not allowed to advertise that they are unbiased and nonpartisan, or unbiased and nonpartisan. They're not allowed to say that anymore, and maybe that's what we need.
Right.
But that's something I can think of, because I can't. As much as I don't like Facebook and I don't like Twitter and I don't like any of these organizations, I also don't think it's right to force them to put up things that they don't agree with. It's a thin line, but I also think that they should have to be upfront about that. That they shouldn't be able to hide behind the First Amendment and say we can claim that we're this, and at the same time say, well, we don't want it on there, so we're getting rid of it. You can't have both. You got to do one or the other.
And there's something like, there was talk of a lawsuit against Google about YouTube because if they claim that they're a platform, I believe that there's laws on the books saying that a platform has to host all legal or legally expressed ideas. So like they don't have to allow kiddie porn and torture and things like that, because that's already illegal. But aside from that, whereas if they're going to censor things or if they're going to cherry pick, they become a publisher, and then that changes things and I think that should have to go for social media as well, which I guess technically YouTube is a form of social media, sure. Because as a platform, I think that there's some semblance of openness that's required.
Right. And like I said, if they want to just admit it right up front. When you're signing in, you're creating your account, there is a warning says, hey, we don't permit conservative what do you call it? Conservative material. Yeah, we don't allow talking good about the Second Amendment. Then be honest about it from the start.
See, but the problem is, in Facebook, it's just more that, well, if you want the best chance of connecting with people you have to use the biggest platform. So for a personal use, it's a little different. Whereas where you start looking at it as It's kind of the modern Yellow Pages, even.
Yeah.
Well, then, from a business type standpoint, if you're using it as sort of free advertising, then you need the platform that's got the biggest reach. So you have the best chance of reaching your customers.
Right.
And so then when they cease being a platform and become a publisher, that becomes problematic. That's take YouTube. Once again, obviously, they're not the most 2A friendly. On the other hand, if I want to reach the widest audience and have the best chance of growing my audience, I'm not going to do that on Gunstreamer. I'm not going to do that on the Utah Gun Exchange. I'm not going to do that on BitShoe. I need to be on YouTube. And then I'm walking this razor edge. Obviously the push is to get the main channel, honestly, to get both channels, but the push is to get the channels to 1,000 subscribers to have the potential to monetize. But I know that YouTube's never going to really allow my content to be monetized.
But here, I'll give you the flip side of it. Cable companies are public utilities. And look how atrocious they are.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Telephone companies, public utilities. They're legal monopolies. And they can pretty much do whatever they want. Now, YouTube's already doing that. You could argue Facebook. But what if they actually are now sanctioned by the government as public utilities and they can do whatever they want to? And you've got no recourse, which is what happens right now. If you don't like your telephone, well, before cell phones, go back to landlines. If you don't like your local telephone company, there's nothing you could do. Right now, today, still, if you don't like your cable company, there's nothing you can do. You can't change cable company. That's a lot how it is for a lot of people when it comes to internet in rural areas. They've got nothing. Where my parents live, they've got DSL. I actually lived in one place where we had no cable, we had no DSL. We had nothing. And when I called and talked to them, the companies just laughed at me and hung up the phone. So that's kind of the flip side of, I don't think claiming it's going to be a public utility is going to help you, because public utility does not mean that they have to now abide by the Bill of Rights. The cable company, the telephone company is not required to give you service just because they're a public utility.
Right.
They're not required to allow you to talk on your phone as long as you want to. So I don't think calling it a public utility is going to do any bit. Unfortunately, I don't think it's a bit of good. You know what would have solved this problem, though, for these social media companies? If they had the guts to just say no. So if you look at a more liberal-minded website, they'll tell you that Facebook is doing everything they can to help the conservatives. If you look at a conservative website, they'll say liberal. They're doing everything to help liberals. And Facebook has done this thing over and over again, and YouTube has done it, and Google has done it, and Microsoft and everybody else of, okay, this side's complaining too much, so we'll go to the opposite side. Instead of just going, no, we're not going to do it. It is incumbent on you as the consumer of this product to make a wise decision. It is not incumbent on us to fact check for you or to limit what somebody has posted. It's not incumbent on me to, if you, Blair, have posted something on the internet saying, I'm trying to think of a crazy out there conspiracy. None's coming to mind.
I've got one. Joe Biden is a third stage Alzheimer's patient and will have the 25th Amendment enacted on him if he wins.
There you go. You post that. It is incumbent on me to look at that and go, to either go, oh, okay, or to go, it doesn't sound right. Why is it Facebook's responsibility or YouTube or anybody else's? It's not their responsibility necessarily to tell you, hey, I'm going to warn all the people that see your post that you might be lying and that he's only a stage 2. But instead of just doing that, Facebook just went, People are complaining, so we're gonna lose like $100 in ads, so we'll stop it. Well, now the other side's complaining, so now we have to do something to make them happy. And instead of just going, no, it's your responsibility. You're the consumer. You're the one watching this, so
Well,
you decide what's truth and what's not. You do your own research. We're not doing it for you. This is something that we teach. We claim that we send kids off to school and to college to train them to teach and be critical thinkers. That's the claim. And yet we want to protect them from actually exercising what they've supposedly been taught. And I think if Facebook and YouTube and all, etc., had just at the very beginning gone, no, we're not. No, it's your job to figure that out.
well, the
Not ours.
problem is that we send children to school to indoctrinate them to be good little Soviet children. But anyway, um, uh,
Like I said, that was the claim. The claim. Again, that would be a fact check apparently now by Facebook.
Partially untrue. Anyway, but so the common claim is, though, well, it's their right to host whatever they want or deny whatever they want on their
Right.
platform. Let's face it, every store you go into, they reserve the right to refuse to service to anybody for any reason. That's okay. That's fine. That's kind of a capitalist idea, free business, free market, all that. But so then the comment is said, so just go build your own. Which goes back to, okay, fine, you built your own. Now, what kind of reach do you have? A. But then we have situations like what happened to BitChute yesterday. BitChute, of course, intending to be the free wild, wild west of uploaded videos. Most content filters, for like schools and things, automatically block BitChute because of you can find so much stuff on there. And they were deplatformed for a while yesterday during the height of people trying to report and see election results.
Right.
And so much pro-Trump stuff has been suppressed on YouTube that a lot of people have gone to BitChute for that. And so now the question becomes, well, I don't know who their host is. I don't know who their host was. I don't know why they wouldn't have that. I would think that Switzerland would probably have been the best host country for them to choose. But with video, you might end up with some serious latency there.
Here's my thought. If you're going to, this is on them, in my opinion, because if you're going to host something that you know is going to be controversial, you know that there are going to be people who don't like it, and on a large scale, you need to invest then in getting your own hardware and taking care of it. Effectively, when it comes down to it, they're using somebody else's computer to put their stuff on. At that point, that company has the right, as the owners of that company, I mean, if we really want to talk about being a free market, they have the right to decide, no. I gave you a great example of something this morning that's atrocious. I'm not going to even repeat it on air. It's legal. It's completely legal and protected under the First Amendment, but it's absolutely terrible. That hosting company should have the right to say, no, I don't want it on our systems, period. I don't care that it's legal. I don't want it on our systems. And I think that carries over to anything else. The hosting company, it's their hardware, it's their systems. On this one, I honestly feel like this is BitChute's own fault. Either they should have talked to the hosting company before they ever started it and said, hey, we're just going to let it be a free-for-all. This is what our site's going to be like. Are you going to be okay with this? And some companies will go, yeah, whatever. We don't care. As long as you pay us, what do we care? And some companies would have gone, no. And at that point, they can decide. And again, if you're putting your stuff on somebody else's computer, you are beholden to them at that point. Even if they just decide we want to close up shop, what would BitChute do if one day they decided we're just going to close down?
That's a good point.
The hosting. Yeah. So you're always taking that risk. And, I can't sit here and say that a company, like in that kind of situation, a hosting company should have the requirement to host something that they just don't agree with and they don't want on their systems, whether it's legal or not legal. Again, it's a little bit different than a provider. Provider, things are just going back and forth through your systems. That'd be one thing. This is actually sitting on their
Right.
computers.
But there again,
So to me, I think BitChute is a little bit more at fault on that one for not doing a little bit better research and talking and kind of seeing what they can do. That's just my opinion.
hang on. There's actually Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Hold up.
Correct. That's the one that they're trying to actually revoke right now. That's the one they're trying to revoke so that they can sue Facebook or the government can penalize Facebook and other forums for not censoring content. That's actually a much bigger problem than Facebook doing it. This is they want to revoke that so that they can get Facebook to censor whatever they want.
Right, but the fact that, I don't know, I need to read through.
230 just means that they can't be held liable. So if you put something on Facebook, and this is where it's really kind of funny why Facebook could have had the opportunity to go, no, because 230 protects companies that if you're putting a bunch of false information again, and Biden's family wants to sue you now for saying that he has Alzheimer's, they can't sue Facebook. They can sue you. They can take action against you for libel or whatever, but they cannot touch Facebook. That law actually protects Facebook, YouTube, etc., and allows them to have whatever content. And when people start complaining, to go, no, because they're not responsible for the content.
Right.
And so, ironically, it's like that's what I was saying before, is they have protection already, legal protection.
Right. So they're just being terrible.
So they should have had the guts. Yeah, they should have had the guts to say no. And they didn't.
So I guess one thing that kind of perplexes me, because typically big business people, making lots of money and all of that tends to be like viewed as this Republican idea, right? This capitalist Republican. So why is Silicon Valley, why is data tech so typically liberal?
I think the Rona. I think it was born out of, if you go back into the 80s and 70s, 80s, 90s, I think programmers and such tend to be a lot more libertarian minded. Leave me alone. Let me have my own life. And at the time, I'm not sure if there was a lot of money in it at the time or not, but I don't think they cared so much about the economic side of it. It was the personal freedom. I can, whether it has to do with drugs or anything else, just let me live my own life. And I think my guess would be, as time went on, as the Democrat, the progressive, just kind of, as you get some of these different things that were coming out of the left, like whether you're talking about, what's the best way to say it? Just look at San Francisco, the mentality out there. My guess is just that kind of all came together, if you will. It kind of melded together. And the Democrat Party decided to jump on that and market themselves to that kind of thing. Because if you look, Reagan's days and stuff like that, California was a lot more conservative minded. And it's only been in the 90s. And I'm just guessing. I've never really studied all that, but I think that's just kind of the way it went through. Remember also that, when you're coming up in the 80s and 90s, how are computer nerds viewed? More as, at that time period, you had businessmen, you had blue collar, and then you had computer nerds who were kind of the discards. They're kind of off to the side. Nobody wants to talk to them. They're kind of the outcast. Well, again, Democrats and lefts kind of went out and embraced those kind of outcast people. Whereas the Republicans were still a lot more focused on businessmen and stuff like that. So if I had to guess, that's where it came out of. And because people like Zuckerberg or any other CEO out there need to appeal to those people to get them to work for them, it makes sense to embrace
Well,
that side. And again, this is just
and I guess
speculation.
though, now that I think about it, a lot when you look at a lot of tech company kind of success stories, they were doing whatever in college, and they were in that college life, and they had their
Right.
great billion-dollar idea. And let's face it, we all
Right.
know that the higher education platforms are definitely liberal indoctrination centers.
Yes, especially as you're getting, I
So,
think, especially as
well,
the
and
90s progressed.
especially in those degree fields that they don't count for anything. I mean, realistically, if the crap hits the fan and all of our societal underpinnings and infrastructure is gone tomorrow.
Gender studies is extremely
Correct.
important.
But no, realistically, what the things that you and I do as day jobs where it deals with technology, they're completely worthless.
Correct.
I mean, I really,
They really
you
are.
and I are outliers in that we both have real world, like physical manifestation type skill sets that we can fall back on, and we happen to right now work in a field of ones and zeros. Um, but both of us have acknowledged, if we had a large scale EMP attack tomorrow, our current careers are gone. They're disappeared. They're fake.
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, I guess that was all kind of like I thought
But
about
yeah,
that.
I think that's I've never really thought about it, so that's why I had to kind of think it out. You put me
Yeah,
on
I
the
did
spot on
because
that one.
it came to me while we were talking. I'm like, wait a minute. Most
But no, that's a good point, and it's something that I've thought about before, but I've never thought it through. So talking it through actually kind of helped me to understand better.
it's
Also, how
like
did we get
almost
here?
any other multi-billion-dollar industry tends to be kind of that capitalist mindset, and
Correct.
technology is sort of an outlier there. Um,
But here's the thing: it's not. I guarantee you. Look at Bezos. Look at Zuckerberg. Oh, they definitely live out the
oh,
capitalism
they do,
lifestyle.
they do, but they
But they put on that front of caring, just like the Democrat Party puts on a front of caring about minorities. They put on that front because they know that they need to appeal. If you've got a lot of people who have been indoctrinated now through college and stuff like that to feel this is the way things should be, you have to appeal to them. They're not going to go work for you if you act like you are a Wall Street banker. They're
right.
just not, because they feel like there's this whole thing of we have to be in touch with our feelings and ourselves, and we are when I don't
Right.
know, whatever. The point is that they want to go work for a company. So the best way to appeal to that is let's pretend we're that way, even though they're not. They're absolutely not. But let's pretend we're that way so that we can get them to come work for us. Because you know what? In the end of the day, for them, the money is the most important. They may actually be better capitalists than
Oh, there's
capitalists.
probably some truth to that.
Because if you think about it, a Wall Street banker, a oil exec, they're not pretending. They're going with, well, I've got my money, and I'm going to make sure everybody knows I like my money, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those groups you're talking about are actually better at playing the capitalist game than the capitalists they claim to hate.
Yeah, and Armed Ape. Yeah, we've Bezos, Zuck, and realistically, most of National Congress. Yeah, they're absolutely modern day
Mhm.
oligarchs.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. And yeah, universities. I mean, universities have changed to what they were from what they were supposed to be, what they originally were, to what they're marketed
right.
as now. Absolutely have changed.
Well, once again, Elias, we I don't think we spawned enough vitriol and anger, and you know, I don't know. I guess I don't want to come across as resigned, but I just stand by. I'm going to make the best of whatever situation I'm given, Will I continue to
It,
do everything I can to politically keep my rights? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Um, but until somebody comes to kick down my door and I have to fight that fight, I'm gonna keep living my life, guys. And that's my advice to you guys. And you guys are a smart bunch. I know that's what you guys are gonna keep doing. All of us have seen the writing on the wall and had a suspicion that things might turn sideways.
here's kind of what I've said, and I've said it to people who are on both sides of the line here, and everywhere in between. Do you think our country is at the point where one person in one office in the government can take down the entire country? If no, then it doesn't matter who's sitting behind the desk in the Oval Office, because they can't destroy the country. You just said that. And if the answer is yes, then it doesn't matter. It means we've already lost. Because if we're in a position where that one person can take it down, then we've already lost. So it doesn't really matter who's behind the desk in the Oval Office, because we're already done for. So in either case, in the first case, there's definitely no reason to panic. Okay, you know what? In 4 years, we'll do this again. And actually, in 2 years, we'll do it again with Congress. And if it's the latter, well, at that point, we're kind of past the point of what we can control. So,
well,
you make the best of it.
You know, to quote John Lovell, train hard, train smart. But
the fact is, don't stress about it, because it's just gonna make things worse. I guess is the best way I can say it. Get right, yeah, because you're just gonna make it worse.
Yeah, the panic is always going to cloud judgment. So once again, I've said that before. Don't panic. Keep a clear mind. Now, do you know though what one person really can change, Elias? Well, that too. But I was gonna say one person can click the thumbs up on this video. Make sure I saw several of you guys, since I have switched over to live streams on their own dedicated channel. Some of you guys haven't subbed over here and haven't clicked the notification bell. So you guys don't have to do that. You can plan on just coming here every Wednesday, but this is where our live streams live now. It seemed to be expedient to separate it. So anyway, but I appreciate you guys joining us.
The thumbs up is definitely a lot more useful for Blair than changing a light bulb.
Yeah, I'm capable of changing my own light bulbs. I can only click my own thumbs up once, and I don't do that. It's probably stupid of me, but it feels disingenuous. You guys can also...
That depends. If you ever have one that you don't like, then you can thumb yourself down too.
That's a fantastic idea.
You know, you're at the end of it, as long as you're honest with yourself.
You guys can...
This episode sucked.
You guys could also, if you want, head over to the merchandise store, pick yourself up a t-shirt, hoodie, coffee cup. You know, it's getting cold out. I will tell you guys, I am working towards bringing merchandise sales in-house. As a matter of fact, I go pick up my first inventory tomorrow is the plan. That's kind of awesome and slightly scary. But until all of that gets underway, I am still using Teespring. You can feel free to reach out to me if you want to work on direct sales before I get everything else set up. I do have stickers in stock. So, yeah, feel free to DM me on Facebook or Instagram if you want to go ahead and purchase direct instead of going through Teespring. It's been handy to not have to have inventory on hand, but I've been less than impressed on how quickly they do, in fact, print when there is demand. And then, of course, you guys, if you want, can support the channel over on Patreon or Subscribestar, and that'll get you guys early access to the new videos on the main channel when they come up, and I probably even, once I get things sorted out with the merchandise store, probably even do a Patreon and Subscribestar discount just to say thank you for the continued monthly support of the channel. And then finally, if you're not following the channel over on Facebook and or Instagram, you can do that using the username on screen and get some behind the scenes looks at upcoming videos or subjects of upcoming videos. You know, I'll be sharing memes that I find funny. You know, just we'll have a good time, have some discussion until I find myself deplatformed. And then Elias's information is down in the description, and is I don't know if you have anything you'd like to share in relation to that, Elias, or all
Nothing I
right.
can think of.
Yeah, appreciate that sub, Armed Ape, and again. We can discuss elsewhere. I just felt like it was a good idea, and so I done did it. And I've actually moved all of the archived live streams. All of that stuff is over here on Tactical Review Live now. So, guys, I wish that I had news that we in the 2A community would find more uplifting immediately. I wish that I had conclusive discussion for tonight, but I do want to remind you guys that it's not necessarily all stormy skies and doom and gloom, but definitely if you haven't done, especially if you live in a more metropolitan area, if you haven't done a little bit of stocking up, it'd be a good time to do it. And we've already seen we've seen a lot of civil unrest through the course of the year, and this is just an excuse for those people who would want to disrupt society.
Right. We've already seen some in the last 24 hours.
Absolutely.
So, and that's with their candidate winning. By the way, this is not so far. This has been the left, and their candidate's winning right now, and they're still. So.
Yep, the party of love and tolerance, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, we're going to end with that, guys. Till next time, which will probably be a pre-made video on the main channel. That link is down below, but I think all of you guys are subscribed to the main Tactical Review channel. Until next time, shoot straight, stay safe.